There are some problems here. Sorry, big time.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we have pretty good show for you all. It is not as crazy of a news day as we have grown accustomed to, but there are very important stories to share with you all, including updates on the indefinite ceasefire that Trump claims the US and Iran has agreed to, what's really going on with that, and more importantly, what is going on with that Strait? Okay, because the administration can't seem to get its facts straight. So we're gonna tell you what we know as we know it. We've done some digging and I can't wait to share those details with you. We'll also talk about how it's here, the use of artificial intelligence to do psyops, especially when it comes to important policy issues, foreign policy matters. That's pretty high up in the rundown today, so stick around for that. We're also going to deconstruct, decode, dig into the most loud Iranian Americans who begged for the United States to bomb Iran. And now all of a sudden they're like, what, me? I never did that, did I? I cannot wait to share that story with you. As always, just want to encourage you to like and share the stream if you're watching us live. You can also go to tyt.com/join to become a member. Members help to keep us independent, free from any type of censorship, and you guys keep our boats afloat. So thank you to our members. There will be a members only bonus episode after our main show today. I'm gonna dig into the Laura Loomer, Candace Owens drama, because I definitely have some thoughts. But before we get to any of that, let's get to the hardcore substance. Let's talk about Iran.
Trump is bored of this war and wants it over. Whatever. You know, maybe it wasn't the best thing to start if you didn't have the patience to actually see it through. That's what his supporters of the war might say. I mean, those of us who have been against it from the beginning would like to see it wrapped up, whether it's out of boredom or not. It's really too bad that the cost of American lives isn't the motivator. It's that Trump has moved on to other things because he has the attention span of a gnat.
Preach it, sister. Now, after President Trump announced the indefinite ceasefire between the United States and Iran, which, by the way, I'm not even sure Iran agreed to. Trump just announced it, but nonetheless, the blockade on Iranian vessels remains, which is why Iran is saying that they will keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. So in essence, there's a double blockade still in place as the global economy begins to really fall apart. Just yesterday, Lufthansa, which is one of these major European airline companies, announced that they are already canceling 20,000 flights in order to save jet fuel. And the domino effect of this conflict, of this war, is absolutely disastrous. And some are really concerned that Trump went in, took the advice of the Israelis, which you never do. You never take the advice of the Israelis, ever. But he did it. He thought it was gonna be an easy war, wasn't an easy war. And what did we get in return? Khamenei was replaced with a younger Khamenei. By the way, all of the older IRGC members who were assassinated were replaced with young men who tend to be a little more, I don't know, energetic and a little more quick to shoot from the hip. So not a win there for the United States. The other thing to keep in mind is, well, we didn't get regime change, okay, fine. We did get something though, and that was the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Now there are countries who have to pay tolls if they want to transport cargo through the Strait. And some of the countries that happen to be allies or friendly with Iran might get some special deal. We here in the United States, we're energy independent. We've got nothing to worry about. Why are our gas prices up then if we're energy independent? Oh yeah, that's right. We're talking about a global market. So when you have less supply and demand remains where it is, costs go up for ordinary people all across the globe, including here in the United States. And that's if you're lucky enough to only suffer that consequence, because if you go to some Asian countries, they're rationing fossil fuels. They're rationing oil as we speak. Just a complete and utter disaster. Now, after President Trump announced this indefinite extension of a ceasefire with Iran, these blockades stay in place. And then what happens? Well, the embargo was expanded to cover all Iranian vessels on the high seas or those carrying goods that could be used by Iran in the conflict on April 16th, according to notices from the US Navy. So this is when the Trump administration implemented this blockade on vessels traveling to and from Iranian ports. And they did succeed a little bit when it came to blocking transit. So for instance, US forces have detained one container ship in the Gulf of Oman so far. Congratulations. US Central Command also said this week on Tuesday that the US Navy had directed 28 vessels to turn back to Iranian ports since the blockade began. So I'm sure the US is really feeling themselves, right? I mean, we did a blockade on Iranian oil as Iran maintains a blockade of the Hormuz Strait, meaning that we still have far less supply of what we need, not just oil and gas, by the way, fertilizer, which is incredibly needed, necessary. We're gonna deal with increased global hunger as a result of this fertilizer now being blocked because of these blockades. But here's what the reality is, and something that the FT has done a really, really good job covering. Iran has something known as a shadow fleet. What is that? Hold on. So as a result of all of this, Trump thinks he's crushing the Iranians, right? And he even told CNBC in an interview that the blockade has been a tremendous success. But Trump is either lying or he has absolutely no idea that the blockade is being circumvented by the Iranians. So let's go to the FT's reporting, shall we? Tens of ships have managed to circumvent the blockade. According to Vortexa, at least 19 tankers with links to Iran have passed through the US blockade to exit the Gulf. At least 15 have entered the Gulf, heading toward Iran from the Arabian Sea. And this is a good thing. I'll explain why in a moment. But let me continue with the rest of the reporting here, where the FT also notes that at least 6 of those that left were confirmed as carrying cargoes of Iranian crude oil amounting to 10.7 million barrels. Iran's oil, which is normally sanctioned, tends to sell at a discount to Brent crude. Assuming a $10 discount, that volume would represent revenue of about, that's a lot of money, $910 million. Okay, oops. So the US blockade, here in American media, you would be under the impression that it's working perfectly and it's really applying pressure to the Iranians. But if you pay attention to better media, for lack of a better word, they are actually reporting the truth. And these shadow fleets are real. They are able to get their oil out of that area and transport it to where it needs to go. And the reason why I say that's a good thing is because it is easing the cost of fuel. It is. That's the reason why in the very beginning of this war, Donald J. Trump lifted the sanctions that had been implemented on Iranian oil, because he wanted to ensure that there would be at least some supply getting out into the market, even though it was the Iranians. And then he threw a temper tantrum once he realized that you can't get the Iranians to cave just because you wrote some mean messages on Truth Social. They're a little more sophisticated than that. Now, I am not a supporter of the IRGC, but my opinion about the IRGC doesn't matter because I don't live in Iran. The only people whose opinion matters are the Iranian people who had been terrorized by US and Israeli bombs for weeks until Trump announced this 2-week ceasefire. Now, with that in mind, we should also talk a little bit about the made up fractures within the Iranian government, because there's been a lot of news about that lately. It's obviously organized, orchestrated, but is there any reality that there's fracturing within the Iranian regime? Let's get to it. So there's so many claims right now that, the Iranians are in trouble. They're not getting along. There are fractures within the regime. And it's interesting because we heard nothing about this until suddenly all these news outlets start making the same claim simultaneously. In fact, Donald Trump, our president, posted about this on Truth Social, saying, based on the fact that the government of Iran is seriously fractured, we have been asked to hold our attack on the country of Iran until such time as their leaders and representatives can come up with a unified proposal. I mean, I feel like Iran has been very clear in what their proposal is. They want to maintain control over the Strait of Hormuz. They didn't do that before, but since we attacked them, they have now made good on their promise to control the Strait of Hormuz, and they intend to continue doing so. We have seen some willingness from the Iranians when it comes to, their enriched uranium. But the problem with this whole situation is the fact that the Iranians, for good reason, don't trust Donald Trump. And they say it over and over again. Iran was hit with 2 surprise attacks by the United States as they were engaging in negotiations. The first time was during the 12-day war when we went in and bombed their nuclear facilities. Trump claimed that they were obliterated, that there was no reason to go back in. But, his handlers had a good talk with him in the Situation Room and goaded him into going into a longer war, which has now turned into a quagmire with Iran. And that's where we are today. The only fracturing I see is the fracturing of the Republican Party here in the United States, with some Republicans, having their head on straight, understanding and realizing what a devastation this war has been for the US. And then you have those who lick Trump's boots no matter what and are telling themselves pretty little lies about how things are going real well in Iran when in fact they are not. At least things aren't going well for us and the globe if you take a good hard look at the global economy. Okay, but when it comes to the IRGC, what kind of fracturing is he talking about? I haven't seen it myself. Well, the IRGC is, first of all, let me just say, there's no in-depth reporting on this, no specificity, yet mainstream media, I guess, took note and just started running with this narrative. So Colonel Daniel Davis was recently speaking to Trita Parsi, the co-founder of the Quincy Institute. And I really appreciate Trita Parsi's perspective on this matter. He's clearly an expert on foreign policy, particularly foreign policy involving Iran. So let's hear what he has to say about this fracturing narrative.
This was shortly after the Jesse Waters show. He says, breaking: the Iranian Guard just took the Ayatollah hostage, was the report last night. Generals are blocking peace talks, holding their own negotiations, holding their own negotiators hostage while their economy collapses. No one is calling the shot. A coup is in the works. Funny though, I didn't see any reporting of that anywhere else in the world.
Essentially, what Trump is doing is that he's kind of washing his hands of this. He's created a major mess in the region. And now he's like, we're going to have indefinite ceasefire, which creates a new scenario in which he's pulled out of the war, but he hasn't resolved the issue. And to be able to make that more palpable, we're putting out this narrative that says, well, the whole reason why this is happening is not because Trump is pulling out and washing his hands and wants to move on to other issues, but because the Iranians don't have their act together. So it's a convenient narrative to put out. It's part of the blame game, but it is disconnected from reality. At a minimum, we cannot say that there's any evidence that connects it to reality.
We obliterated their Navy. We obliterated them. They're done. They're fracturing. Mission accomplished. We can pull out of this war and everything will be fine. Except everything won't be fine. First of all, indefinite ceasefire means you're still at war, right? And that war could be sparked at any minute. And by the way, I don't fully trust Donald Trump in that he would pull out and just leave it at that. I think it's very easy to goad him into conflict, goad him into war. The other thing is, how much money have we spent? How much military equipment have we lost? How many of our bases in the Gulf have been destroyed? And what exactly did we get in return? What did we get in return? 13 of our soldiers are dead. So what we got in return was the Strait of Hormuz being closed. The Iranians taking control of the Strait of Hormuz. That's our big success story. What is this? Now look, we're in a terrible situation. Terrible situation. It would have been far better if we decoupled from Israel prior to this war popping off. So the imbecile known as the president of the United States wouldn't get manipulated by Mossad and Benjamin Netanyahu in the Situation Room on February 11th, as he did, and didn't end up risking everything to go to war with a country that didn't even have military capability, didn't have weaponry that could even reach the United States. Oh, but they could reach Europe. Were they threatening Europe? What are we even talking about? They weren't threatening Europe. The only people who felt threatened by Iran were the Israelis. And they should have felt threatened. They kept encroaching on and attempting to steal land from their neighbors. That's why Hezbollah exists. Hezbollah formed after 1982, after the Israelis invaded southern Lebanon. So like it's a very simple, I mean, just you can distill it, right? Like just take it and think of it in your own personal context, okay? If I just start busting through the door of my neighbor's house and I start stealing his or her crap, they're probably gonna take action, right? No, am I worried that my neighbor is gonna attack me out of nowhere? No, I'm not worried about my neighbor because humans don't work that way. That's not how humans work. Don't start nothing, won't be nothing, right? But Israel would like to expand its borders without any challenge, without any resistance. And really the heart of the resistance right now is Iran. Iran is what funds Hezbollah. Iran is what funds the Houthis. Iran supports Hamas. And you can't have that, right? But here's the thing, Iran is not an easy country to defeat. And expecting to win a war like this in this ham-handed way where you have one meeting in the Situation Room with a bunch of bad people who are intentionally lying to you. I mean, it's absurd, but that's what Trump did. Absolutely absurd. The only reporting on the so-called fracturing of the IRGC comes from sources like Fox News. They're huge cheerleaders for this war. Or Axios, which quite frankly, I don't think can be trusted if the byline is Barak Ravid, because he's like a former IDF intelligence guy who clearly still has connections to the Israelis, right? So is Barak Ravid doing factual reporting, or is he using US media in order to build up narratives that are beneficial for the Israelis? Which, by the way, what is beneficial to the Israelis is not necessarily beneficial for the American people. In fact, oftentimes it's the opposite. But nonetheless, here's what Barak Ravid claims. Iran civilian leaders, including Ghalibaf and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, favored continuing talks to extend the ceasefire and reach a deal. But Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Commander General Ahmad Vahidi and his deputies refused to offer concessions and oppose negotiations as long as the naval blockade continues, the sources said. I don't believe this reporting at all. I don't believe it at all. Every single person we've heard from in the Iranian government has said, if you keep the blockade in place, we are not going to agree to have any conversations or any negotiations, because a blockade on Iranian vessels is an act of war. So it violates the ceasefire. I haven't heard any disagreement within the IRGC on that matter at all. Now, Ravid suggests that US seizure of an Iranian cargo ship has, deepened this rift. And when I say deepen the rift, I'm not even talking about deepening the rift between the United States and Iran, deepening the rift among the Iranians, among members of the regime. I don't buy it. And that Trump will give the IRGC some time to, like work out their fake power struggle that he alleges that they're dealing with right now. Again, I don't see any evidence to support what Trump is claiming here. And I actually agree with Trita Parsi. This is a narrative that's being built up in order to provide an excuse for the US to kind of step aside, step away. But will Trump be able to step away? And the answer to that is unequivocally no. The Israelis will ensure that we are involved in this war unless the American government is finally willing to do what's necessary and decouple from Israel. So we actually have foreign policy and policy in general that benefits the American people. The American people should be first. And if you're wondering how the Iranians interpret the indefinite ceasefire that Trump announced just yesterday, well, they're skeptical to say the least. So Mahdi Mohammadi, who is the national security advisor to the Iranian parliamentary speaker and chief negotiator, Ghalibaf, wrote this on X. Trump's ceasefire extension means nothing. The losing side cannot dictate terms. The continuation of the siege is no different from bombardment and must be met with a military response. Moreover, Trump's ceasefire extension is certainly a ploy to buy time for a surprise strike. The time for Iran to take the initiative has come. So, I mean, if you interpret this the way I'm interpreting it, it almost seems as though Iran could even hit, I don't know, US or Gulf targets. And when I say US, I don't mean mainland USA. They can't reach us with their missiles. Okay, I want to be clear about that. But there could be some US military targets that they're eyeing or Gulf targets that they're eyeing. I have no idea. But they're not really buying what Trump is selling when it comes to this indefinite ceasefire. And I think that the point about buying time is an important one when you consider the fact that the United States is running out of missile interceptors. And not just that. I mean, it's not just the defensive military capability we're worried about here. We're using a lot of our weaponry, offensive weaponry. So time to, I guess, refuel could be a possibility. But here's the problem, guys. Part of what has made Iran so difficult to defeat is they're relying on much cheaper weaponry, drones, for instance, that are not only cheap, but easy to produce. What's up with our, production capability here? I mean, think about how much our government throughout the decades has kneecapped us by off-sourcing or offshoring manufacturing and production of pretty much everything. So we don't really have a manufacturing base here to build the weapons as quickly as we would need to build them, considering how quickly Iran can build these cheap and easy to make drones. So who knows what's going to happen? I do think that Trump knows that we're in a bad spot. I think he's trying to spin this in a way that doesn't look so bad for the United States. But as long as we remain allies with a country that does not have our best interests in mind at all, and thinks it's totally okay to use our money and American human lives to carry out their own agenda, we're going to keep finding ourselves at a disadvantage over and over and over again. And I think it's enough. I think we should move forward. I think we should move on. We should forge better alliances with countries that see it as a 50-50 relationship. A little give and take, as opposed to a country like Israel that does nothing but take and even kills American citizens in the West Bank. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about how artificial intelligence is now playing a role in PSYOP operations related to questions of war and peace. We'll be right back. Ice cream. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to our first social break of the day. Let's start off with Sina Hogaboom, who says that Loomer person is hard on the eyes. Sure is. I'll just leave it there. Let's go to our Twitch community where Ryu Ral says, if someone blockades the US blockade, will that cancel the blockades and leave the Iran blockade? I don't think that works. I just think you just keep compounding blockades. So let's not do that. Let's not do that. He also writes back and says, Anna has thoughts, must be a day that ends in Y. I know, right? I am not as high energy today as I usually am, so bear with me, guys. Avenger Dragon 89 says Homer Simpson is more trustworthy than Donald Trump. I totally agree with you on that. Quite frankly, Homer Simpson is more trustworthy than like 80%, 85% of politicians. Octo Squiddy says every single day we continue this war with Iran is another day where the US digs itself further into a hole. We need to bring all our troops home now and deal with the consequences of the mess Trump started as they come. Yeah. And thank you to J. Edgar Boozer for the Twitch sub. I really, really do love your handle. Yeah, guys. I was definitely in like a doom mindset yesterday because I know what Americans are feeling, right? Like you work really hard and you think there's going to be progress in your life. You're going to move forward. Like this war and what it's doing to the economy is setting us back so much, and it makes me pretty furious. All right, let's get back to the show. Listen, there's new copy. Okay, I'm gonna read new copy here. Get ready. Do you know your brain rot index? Laura Loomer doesn't. Okay, let me start that again. That's bad. That's bad. I should include Laura Loomer in the Noble Mobile ad. Okay. Do you know your brain rot index? The average American checks their phone over 200 times a day and has over 5 hours of screen time. That's total BS. I definitely spend more time on my screens. But that means your brain is allegedly rotting. Download Noble Mobile Life app today to track your brain rot index and see just how much you're using your phone and how you can save money by using it less. Available via the App Store or Google Play Store. All right, fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about how disastrous artificial intelligence is because, yeah, of course, they're going to use artificial intelligence to take all our jobs. We all know about that, right? But there are other uses, nefarious uses of artificial intelligence that you should be aware of. So let's get into it. An Israeli-linked organization called Generative AI for Good has published a video that they allege features a survivor of sexual violence in Iran. But its detractors say that this is all manufactured propaganda as part of a regime change psyop. And let me just say, if that is proven to be true, if this is nothing more than a part of Israel's regime change psyop, like, please just give it up already. Please give it up already. Like your desperation for regime change in a sovereign country, which has dragged the United States into war over, which has devastated the global economy. That's, I don't know if Israelis realize this. This is directing hatred toward you. Not because you're Jewish, none of the like funny little stories and fantasies you tell yourself. It's not because of the magical thinking you like to engage in. When people are harmed by your actions, they're not gonna like you. But anyway, let's get back to this psyop. So before we get any further, I do want to remind our audience that this story contains descriptions of sexual violence. So viewer discretion is advised. Generative AI for Good has existed for years now. This is not something that's new. However, people are just catching on to what it is up to and what it can do. Here's why. So Trump posted this on social media. To the Iranian leaders who will soon be in negotiations with my representatives, doubt it, I would greatly appreciate the release of these women. I am sure that they will respect the fact that you did so. Please do them no harm. Would be a great start to our negotiations. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And then he signs off with his name. As you can see, there's an image of 8 women, allegedly Iranian women. So you're looking at this post. Now, Look, there is a lot of disagreement online about whether or not these women are real or whether they're generated by AI. I did my best to try to find the truth, okay? And where did those images originate from? They originated from a guy, actually, let's put that last graphic up again, please, because I wanna show you the name of the individual. So if you look at the top right-hand side, the account is Eyal Yacobi. He's not someone you should trust. And the reason why I say that is because I just had a experience with him, if you will. He recently alleged that I claimed that no one was killed by the IRGC during the Iranian protests, when in reality, I have been pushing back against exaggerated numbers. Do I deny that protesters were killed? I've never once denied it, but he's a liar. I mean, are we really surprised? So that image originated from him and accounts, Israeli accounts like his. So I'm like, okay, is there any news story about this? There were some Israeli publications that were writing about it. Owen Schroyer, an American and also the host of InfoWars, questioned if the women were real. He says, how come they all have the exact same headshot from the exact same photo shoot? Did they all get these professional photos taken together or just another coincidence? I'm sure. In response, Chris Menahan, who runs the InfoLib news account on X, posted the following. There's an Israeli influence operation called Generative AI for Good that creates AI victims of Iran to agitate for regime change. They just held a conference last week in New York City. Here's a short clip of one of the deepfake propaganda videos they released a few weeks ago. So let's watch the clip. Again, this is from Generative AI for Good.
In 2026, the streets of Iran filled with people demanding freedom. The regime answered with force. Tens of thousands were killed, and thousands of women, men, and children were subjected to severe sexual violence. As Iran stands at a turning point, the truth is breaking through. Maral is one of the voices emerging from within Iran, despite the risk. For her protection, her face was digitally altered by AI.
من دستگیر شدم داخل یه دونه ون منو بردن هر کدوممون گروهی به صورت 7-8 نفری میبردن توی اتاق من فکر کردم میبرم فقط کتک میزنم 7-8 نفر ما رو بردن به صورت گروهی به همون تجاوز میکردن.
Okay. So they say that her face has been changed through AI. Maral says, I was arrested and they took me inside a van. They would take us in groups of 7 to 8 women at a time to a certain room. I thought they would only beat us there. They took 7 to 8 women. They raped us in groups. Okay. Later in the video, which is about 4 minutes long, Maral describes her attackers in further detail.
وقتی در قوانین اسلام رو بخونی خب یعنی توی قرآن گفت شده که اگر به جای حمله بکنن و پیروز بشن میتونن به زن و دخترها و حتی پسر بچه ها تجاوز بکنن و این حلاله. میگفتن که شما غنیمت جنگی هستین. حتی یه خانم گفت من متأهلم آقا من شوهر دارم. میگفت تو حلالی به من.
Okay, so she says they said that according to Islamic law in the Quran, during conquest, it is permitted to rape women. I don't believe this. I don't believe this. Sorry. What is it? An Israeli-linked organization called Generative AI for Good. Don't believe it. Lots of red flags here. Sorry. That video was posted in early March. Now, the organization has been active for some time now. In June of last year, the organization's founder, someone named Shiran Mlamdovsky, Somek, sounds like someone who really cares about Iranians, boasted that her content was boosted by, Reza Pahlavi. Interesting, the guy who wants to be like a dictator in Iran. He wants to replace the regime with a dictatorship, but don't worry, he'd only be an interim dictator. Okay, let's take a look.
Since October 7th, we are focusing on three main things. One, to leveraging technology to addressing hate and anti-Semitism, shape the narrative of Israel and the Jewish people, and expose the real face of the radical and the extremist around the world. And I'm honored to share with you that lately I led a project, a campaign in the honor of Ma'asa Amini that has been murdered by the regime in Iran. And using the AI in a very sensitive way, we brought her virtually back to life to share her testimony firsthand with the world. And this campaign went viral on social media and all posted by Raja Pahlavi, the Crown Prince of Iran. And this was a very, very exciting moment for me.
You know, if the Israelis are concerned about hate and unjustified killings and murder and executions, they really need to take a big fat mirror and put it up to their faces. That's what they need to do. Rather than using AI to put out false stories of people who don't even exist in order to spur regime change in Iran. You guys already had Mossad, providing weapons on the ground in late December, early January, which led to the mass slaughter that took place in Iran during those protests, by the way. Didn't work, did it? Didn't lead to regime change. You had the US finally fight the war that the Israelis have wanted our soldiers to risk their lives in for decades. Didn't get the regime change you wanted, did you? You want to talk about slaughter? Let's talk about slaughter. How many journalists have the Israelis killed? Because I think that's pretty relevant to this conversation, right? They want truth. And where do you get the truth from? You get truth from journalists on the ground. But a lot of journalists on the ground have been killed in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Iran. In fact, just today, our friend Courtney Bonneau, a wonderful journalist on the ground in Lebanon, sadly had to report that yet another one of her journalist colleagues was killed. Amal Khalil was killed today, executed by the Israeli army. She was taken into an ambulance, and then the ambulance was targeted too. We know who the killers are. Sadly, our media, along with our government, spends all of their time providing cover for their depravity and treachery. But the American people know what's going on. No amount of censorship is going to change that. We're never going to be able to unsee the unbelievably cruel, barbaric images and videos we have seen over the last 2.5 years. So it is what it is. You can go ahead and use your AI and try to trick us as much as you want. We know what the reality is. And if the Israelis think they're the good guys, I mean, that is just some of the best brainwashing I've ever seen in my life. Because there's literally nothing that can convince me that the good guys in this scenario happen to be the Israelis. All right, let's actually move on to our next break. When we come back, there's a lot more to get to. We'll talk about the spin cycle. We'll talk about Todd Blanche's latest statements about arrests that were made in Alabama. Who was arrested and why? We'll be right back with more.
I was valedictorian in college.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
What's up, everyone? No one got arrested. Well, I'm sure someone got arrested in Alabama today, but the Todd Blanche story has nothing to do with arrests, but it does have to do with an important indictment that I want to share with you, which I'll do once we get back to the show. For now, I'm going to read your comments, starting with our members section. Thank you to Melody Loves Music for gifting a TYT membership. John Camilli says, I have started sending problem reports to YouTube because its default news homepage does not include progressive journalism. Hi, everyone. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Ice Draco 7 says crude oil is at $93, and that's not even the real price when you add in shipping costs and supply and demand. It's more like $130 a barrel. Yeah, and it's going to get worse. It is amazing, by the way, how easily the markets move based on Trump's lies, which is why we get like on the same day we get contradictory statements from Trump. It's crazy. Let's go to our super chats. Dav Mill says, if gun control politicians were serious about gun violence, they would go after criminals who commit violence with guns. Their emotional appeals are a lie. They want a class of serfs to serve them. I think you do have a point to that. I mean, I'll give you one example. Like in California, we have like some of the strictest gun laws ever, right? Except when it comes to prosecuting someone who's in possession of an illegal firearm, we got real soft on that. And it's like, oh, okay, then are you serious about gun control? Like what? Anyway, but point taken. We got to get back to the show. I'll read more of your comments later. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Anna Kasparian with you. I want to share this next story, which was a shocker that I'm still a little bit skeptical of. However, it seems like it's real. So let's talk about the Southern Poverty Law Center and some of the charges against it.
You're alleging that the Southern Poverty Law Center was paying the leaders of KKK and other groups to continue their operations? Is that?
I'm not alleging it. The grand jury returned an indictment that says that Southern Poverty Law Center is raising money, asking folks to give them money to dismantle racism. And over a very long period of time, they were using some of the money they raised from donors to pay to, they call them field, basically to informants.
The Department of Justice has announced a grand jury indictment of the Southern Poverty Law Center on charges of fraud and money laundering. Now, when this story broke this morning, I was pretty shocked about it. And to be quite frank, given the players involved, I thought this seems like a politically motivated prosecution. However, as you read the details, this does seem real. And as with any case, innocent until proven guilty. But what's being claimed here would indeed be a crime. So let me get to the details on what allegedly happened. So apparently, according to acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who hasn't been confirmed for the role, who also, by the way, secured a minimum security facility from notorious groomer and rapist Ghislaine Maxwell, now says that the Southern Poverty Law Center paid informants to monitor racist organizations. Okay, paying informants isn't necessarily illegal, right? But there's more to it than that, allegedly. So a grand jury in Alabama, where SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, is based, handed down this indictment. So it's not like, oh, Todd Blanche unilaterally decided, I'm gonna prosecute these guys. There's no grand jury involved. There is a grand jury involved, and there has to be probable cause in order to pursue this case. So the SPLC faces 11 counts, including wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Only the organization itself has been charged. No specific individuals have been named in this case. However, that could change as this investigation continues. Now, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche detailed the indictment during a press conference today. So let's take a look at what he had to say.
The SPLC is a nonprofit entity that purports to fight white supremacy and racial hatred by reporting on extremist groups and conducting research to inform law enforcement groups with the goal of dismantling these groups. As the indictment describes, the SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred.
That is a very heavy and serious charge. It is. Now look, Southern Poverty Law Center is a nonprofit, and as is the case with all nonprofits, they exist to help solve or alleviate a problem, right? If that problem goes away or if that problem is solved, well, the people who work at that nonprofit are no longer necessary, right? So sometimes you'll hear people talk about the homeless industrial complex in places like California, and they actually do have a point. Now, there are nonprofits who actually do help the homeless, who do amazing work. There's one that I have in mind, the name escapes me at the moment, but what they do is they provide mental health services and housing, and they do regular check-ins every week with their clients to make sure that they're not only housed, but they're getting the mental health they need in order to get themselves out of a terrible situation and be independent, productive members of society. That is a wonderful nonprofit that I love. However, there have been so many audits that have found wrongdoing by nonprofits that actually are not helping the homeless. They seem to only want to make it worse. And as a result of that, they can justify their whole existence as a nonprofit meant to help the homeless. I guess the argument that's being made here by Todd Blanche is that rather than crushing or squashing these hate groups or helping to do so, their actions only fueled or built some of these hate groups. That is what he's alleging. I have to see evidence of that. I obviously do not have the evidence of that. So this case must be proven. I want to be very clear about that. Now, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche also claims that the organization gave at least $3 million to nefarious figures between 2014 and 2023. And he also outlined the SPLC's involvement in the Unite the Right rally, which took place during Trump's first term. That was in Charlottesville. Let's take a look.
The SPLC was paying a member of the leadership group that planned the Unite the Right protest in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 that resulted in the death of one person and injured dozens more. This particular person being paid by the SPLC allegedly received approximately $270,000 over the course of 8 years. In total, according to the indictment, between 2014 and 2023, SPLC paid at least $3 million to 8 individuals at least. These individuals were affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan, United Klans of America, National Socialist Movement, Aryan Nations Affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club, the Nationalist Socialist Party of America, Nazis, and the American Front.
Okay, not good if proven to be true, but we know that our intelligence community will, pay informants all the time, like literal criminals, drug traffickers, whatever it is, cartel members. And what they'll do is they'll offer them some sort of deal in court as long as they act as an informant. Now, obviously, the Southern Poverty Law Center is not an official intelligence agency in the United States. It's a nonprofit. So it really depends on how the law is applied to a nonprofit when it comes to paying informants. But there was a great question asked during this press conference by a reporter. Is this actually illegal? And if it is, what laws are being broken here? Take a listen to what Blanche is alleging.
The Southern Poverty Law Center is a 501c3. Okay, they're required to, under the laws associated with a nonprofit, to have certain transparency and honesty in what they're telling donors they're going to spend money on, and what their mission statement is, and what they're raising money doing. And so, as the indictment points out, there's different ways that they raise money, and in no fundraising efforts that the investigation found did they say, oh, and by the way, we're going to give $1 million to the Ku Klux Klan. So that's fraud. So that's wire fraud. So, and then the bank fraud part of it is you have KYC. You have an obligation to tell your financial institution what the corporation or the entity that you're opening an account for does. And the allegations in the indictment are that these were fictitious companies that were set up, and so there was certain information sworn to by SPLC executives about what the entities were doing that we allege is false.
So again, all of this would need to be proven in court. Whether they actually broke the law would need to be proven. And this is just my opinion. like how I would feel as a donor to the organization. Yeah, I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume that donors to an organization like the Southern Poverty Law Center would be pretty furious to find out that their money was used to pay Klan members or neo-Nazis for whatever reason, right? Like you have to be honest about what you're raising the money for and what you intend to do with it. So we'll see how this plays out. But in October, Kash Patel, who you can see standing beside Blanche in that press conference silently, severed FBI ties with the nonprofit, alleging that it long ago abandoned civil rights work and turned into a partisan smear machine. Okay, so it doesn't help to engage in partisan commentary like that. It makes the case against the Southern Poverty Law Center seem politically motivated. So if I were the administration, I would probably fire Kash Patel sooner rather than later, but who knows what they're gonna do with him. Nonetheless, it's important to know what the Southern Poverty Law Center has to say about this indictment. Its CEO, Brian Fair, has accused the administration of weaponizing the legal system, saying that today the federal government has been weaponized to dismantle the rights of our nation's most vulnerable people and any organization like ours that stands in the breach. So they're denying it. They plan to fight this in court as aggressively as they can. But the real question is whether the SPLC literally paid the neo-Nazis like millions in order to be informants. The SPLC says it has used informants when tracking and exposing hate groups, including white supremacists. Fair on Tuesday said that the organization frequently shared insight from informants with local and federal law enforcement. That part's really important if it's true, including the FBI, but that the nonprofit no longer works with paid informants. So it seems like they're willing to admit that they have paid informants in the past. But I think the important element to this is, did they actually share this information with law enforcement? And, even if they did that, did they break the law if they were raising money from donors and they weren't being honest about what they intended to do with that money? I don't know. I'm obviously not a lawyer, but it doesn't look great. Luckily, they get to make their argument in court and we'll see how this plays out. But Kash Patel is not helping their case at all. I mean, he's the one who seems very politically motivated here. And Todd Blanche was Trump's personal lawyer, and then ended up helping Trump by having a little meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell right before she was moved to Club Fed, where she gets to play with puppies, even though she is a rapist and was Epstein's right-hand woman. Crazy times we live in, right? Anyway, before we go to our second hour, I'm gonna read some of your comments. Give me 1 second while I pull them up. Now would be a good time to share your thoughts with me. All right, we've got Michael Cotavelli who says a group called Bright Mind spoke at Hack the Hate, admitted to being a bot and influence farm for Israel. They claim it was them behind the Hamas is ISIS and were proud that it was even repeated by the US president. They claim they have over 3 billion views. Yeah, I mean, guys, we're living in a terrifying reality now where we don't know what is and isn't reality. So those 8 women who Iran was allegedly gonna execute, but then suddenly said that they're not gonna execute, I don't buy that narrative at all. Like, I did try to find some information about these women. I found some foreign news reports about how Iran said that many of the women had been freed already. Others are being prosecuted and investigated and could be jailed but not executed. I don't know what the truth is. What I do know is that Israelis are liars. They do psyops all the time. I mean, the biggest psyop in the world is that the number one thing that Americans need to be afraid of is radical Islam. People are worried about Sharia law taking over in America. That's crazy. Okay, that was the psyop. And by the way, extremism of any kind is bad. Religious extremism, and we've seen religious extremism in other religions as well. But just be careful with what you believe. I mean, there was this other thing that happened fairly recently where there was a video that I shared for like a minute before I realized this video is not real. So I retweeted it. And then I kid you not, all these pro-Israel accounts start swarming like, oh, why did you undo that retweet? Why did you undo it? Why did you undo it? It was like dozens and dozens of people. I'm like, what is going? I took it down because I realized it wasn't real. It wasn't even up for like 10 minutes. But they were putting out AI generated BS to see people who are sympathetic to, Gazans, to Palestinians, share it so then they can basically discredit you as someone who falls for those types of tricks. That was the one time I did, and it was all orchestrated in order to discredit me. But guess what? I'm not going to be discredited, okay? I usually am able to provide receipts for everything I'm talking about. And more importantly, with AI, a lot of people unfortunately are going to get duped by bad actors. It'd be great if we lived in a society that actually had a government that protected its citizens from false information. But unfortunately, we have a government that partakes in manipulating us, or at least attempts to manipulate us. So we just have to be incredibly careful, do your due diligence, and we got to just do the best we can. But we live in this scary world where everyone's living in a different reality. And when you don't have a shared reality, that's when things start to fall apart. 00083 says Israel invaded Lebanon more than 15 times way back then. Yeah, I know. It's just, it's the most amazing society on the planet, right? Where like you can literally invade your neighbor dozens of times. A resistance group formed to prevent it from happening, to prevent your land from being stolen. And then the Israelis are the victims. Okay, anyway. YTP Renewed says there was no way to win this war anyway. You're right about that. That's why probably I hesitate to say the dumbest president because Trump's pretty dumb, but George W. Bush, pretty dumb president. Not dumb enough to invade Iran though. Think about it. All right, we got to take a break. We've got a lot more to get to. Don't miss it.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
I'm wearing one of our pieces of merchandise. So the funny thing about the Dragon Squad, that's what our viewers call themselves. That's the name of the group, but every individual chooses their own name. You might have Cincinnati Dragon. You might have Harry Potter dragon. We have a Grandma Sunshine dragon is one of those that I remember. These are people that like to have an element of themselves, their lives, what's significant to them reflected as a part of the community. But the concept of the Dragon Squad is just something I threw away as a joke. I was mocking the Proud Boys, these like right-wing groups that come up with a name for themselves that they think is cool, but it's actually really lame. And I thought, off the top of my head, I can come up with something that's still kind of lame, but much cooler. And so I threw out Dragon Squad and I just moved on with my life. But everybody liked it, and so they kept it going, and so we've embraced it. And I think again, this was during the period of the pandemic. I think it was sort of nice to have a renewed sense of community, a feeling that you're a part of something when everything seems so chaotic. And as a result of that, we've got independent artists online streaming, making beautiful digital art of dragons. We've got, we've released a number of pieces of merchandise that people love sending us photos of them. And then, by the way, for me personally, people send me, like you can probably see in the background, like a knitted dragon someone sent me. There's a dragon book they sent me, dragon board games they send me. People have done like custom ironworks, making dragon bottle openers. Like the fans are super invested in diamond art and things like that. And so it's great that they send this stuff. Sometime we're gonna have to set up a wall of all of it. But yeah, it's definitely brought the community a lot closer together. The fact that we were no longer in this big studio, I felt a lot more personally attached to people. It felt very immediate. And I know that I personally needed the connection.
Condoms for Hamas, and they've used them as a method of making bombs.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Thank you to our TYT members, including our TYT premium members, taking a little step above. I like that. Sheikh Himasi writes it and says, okay, Anna, who is Lauren A. Wright and why is she biting your style so hard on Abby Phillip? First of all, I have no idea who that is. Secondly, I don't know, CNN hasn't invited me on. I wonder why that is. So it is what it is. Some people can't take the heat, I guess. But they still have that Scott Jennings guy on. And he is, what is it about that guy that they like so much? Like, what does he provide in terms of information and commentary that's so cutting edge? I don't know. That guy bores the hell out of me. He doesn't offend me. He's just, I don't know, boring, regurgitated, repeated, recycled, traditional right-wing talking points, really, and pro-Israel talking points. Boring. Anyway, let's get to some other news. Let's talk a little bit about the ongoing censorship that I told you all. If you thought it was only going to impact, green card holding students or student visa holders, no, they're coming for you, American citizens, if you dare to criticize one thing and one thing only. Let's get into it.
This is a crazy, crazy story that is unfolding down in Florida. This college student has been arrested for a joke she made in a private group chat involving Netanyahu.
It's true. It's true. It's happening. Mahmoud Khalil, who was viciously targeted by our government for deportation because he happened to be a green card carrying Columbia University student who was critical of Israel. Everyone thought, he's not an American citizen. We don't have to worry about it because we're American citizens. We're God tier. We don't have to worry about our government coming for us. You'd be mistaken because your assumption is that our government represents us above anyone else, right? Well, that's a mistake if you think that. So let's get to the details of the story. A 23-year-old college student is now facing, and I kid you not, 15 years in prison over a joke that she made in a group chat with her stanky ass classmates. And I mean that with my whole chest. Bunch of narcs, bunch of weirdos who don't understand what a joke is. And now the future of this 23-year-old girl is on the line. So Gabriela Saldana was arrested on April 17th over messages that she sent in this group chat. It was on WhatsApp, owned by Meta. So be smarter than that, okay? Be better. But in this case, it wasn't Meta engineers that ratted her out. It was her own classmates. Now, Saldana wanted more time so basically what they were discussing in this group chat was apparently they were supposed to have some sort of event where the students were expected to conduct presentations, their capstone presentations. Saldana needed a little more time, so she was hoping that the event could be, delayed or postponed. And then she makes a joke. What was the joke? You're about to find out.
She thought it was a joke, but the law didn't agree. And now she's facing 15 years in prison. It happened at Florida International University. A 23-year-old student named Gabriela Saldana was in a WhatsApp group with 215 of her classmates. They were discussing a capstone event scheduled at the university's Ocean Bank Convocation Center. Saldana, by her own account, didn't want to go. So, according to screenshots obtained by local media, she typed in a message, which ended up stirring up the controversy. This is what she said.
Netanyahu, if you can hear me, drop some bonbons for us capstone students in Ocean Bank Convocation Center.
Authorities believe bonbons was a coded reference to bombs. That wasn't all. In a second message, she allegedly wrote, there is going to be a bomb in the Ocean Bank Convocation Center, and it was going to be Jonathan's fault.
Bonbons, really? Bonbons. Like, what did the classmates think? That Netanyahu, well, he might be spying in, but that he was spying in and he's gonna literally listen to her and bomb the facility where they're gonna hold their presentations? Did they think that? Were they serious? Did they really think she was being serious? And it's a serious question because she's gonna have to stand trial over this. By the way, the judge, Major, see you next Tuesday. I hope I'm never in front of her court, but she is. Because everyone knows this is a joke. Everyone knows it's a joke. Well, how do I know that everyone knows it's a joke? Well, because she said so in the group chat. We're gonna get to that in just a second. But the university, FIU, alleged that her joke was a credible threat of violence. To an objective person, Judge Mindy Glazier says, it's not a joke. And it would be enough for probable cause. I'm not saying it's enough for beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard of proof when she stands trial for this nonsense. I don't know if the state is going to be able to prove it in trial, but for purposes of this hearing, I believe there is enough for probable cause. You can't convict someone with probable cause, though. So why are you making her go through this when it's obvious it's a joke? She says to an objective person, it's not a joke. Where'd you get your credentials to be a judge? To an objective person, it's not a joke. No, you can say it's subjective. You can make the argument that like, oh, that comment did scare me. I interpreted it differently. But no, it is not objective. An objective person isn't automatically going to look at that and say, no, she's being serious. She's calling for an act of violence. Okay. So we all read how she read how she treated her. What's interesting is if you go online and you look up this judge's name and the way she's treated serious violent offenders who are before her in a court of law, she treats them way more nicely, a lot more lenient. But when it comes to someone who makes a joke in a group chat, oh, you can't have that. Okay. So according to local news outlets in Florida, she faces a charge of writing threats to kill or do bodily harm. And her bail was set at $5,000. Literally in the chat, she makes it clear that she is joking, that it is a joke. Okay, let's go to the first graphic here. When students allegedly didn't take the messages as something to laugh at, Saldana allegedly said, and it's not alleged, I've seen, the copy of the messages, said that she wrote a dumb joke that should not have been made. So to my fellow Floridians, you guys cool bucking the bill or paying the bill for this like ridiculous case that should be thrown out immediately? Like, do you look at that woman and think like, oh yeah, she's gonna bomb that venue? Or that Netanyahu is somehow gonna hear her calls to bomb that venue? And that guy will bomb anything. So I get it. But the real problem is Netanyahu, right? The trigger happy dude who bombs all his neighbors and invades countries that he shouldn't be invading. But is she a threat? Are they really serious about her being a threat? I don't think so. So here we are. Be careful what you joke about, I guess. Now, if she made a similar joke referencing a different country, would she be in this situation today? I mean, we can't know, but we can speculate. My speculation is no, unlikely that she would be in front of a judge in a court of law over a joke. But guys, this is why maintaining free speech is so important. This is why, for those who were played like fools in like fear mongering about Mahmoud Khalil, the argument here was, the argument by people like us at TYT was, no, there's no due process here. There's no conversation. There's no investigation. There's no indication that he himself has materially supported or defended terrorism of any kind. He just wants, Palestinians to stop getting slaughtered with our money. And he was thrown in prison for that. Green card holder, thrown in prison for that, missed the birth of his first child. And some Americans thought, who cares? No skin off my back. He's not an American citizen. My government would never do that to me. Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would. That's why it's important to fight for free speech, regardless of how much you love or hate that speech, because it's important to protect that freedom. We should be able to express ourselves, or else we're going to look a lot more like the UK. Have you seen what's going down in the UK? They'd be rounding up elderly people and throwing them in prison because they dare protest Israel. I don't want to live in a society like that. Have you seen what's going down in Australia? Real heavy-handed law enforcement when it comes to commentary that's not favorable toward Israel. Israel is not synonymous with Jews. As much as Israel would like to conflate the two, don't conflate the two. Israel is a genocidal terroristic nation state. Even some Israelis within that society disagree with it. I wish more of them did. But when you look at American Jews, for instance, majority of them do not agree with the war in Iran. Are they anti-Semites because they don't agree with what Israel wants? I mean, these questions should be answered. So as much as they want to make people anti-Semites for being critical of Israel or citing Israel's brutality while making a joke, the fact of the matter is that country, not interchangeable with Jews. Just not, sorry. And that, by the way, that goes for people who keep conflating the two because of their anti-Semitism as well. Don't do that. Anyway, we got to take a break. When we come back, a lot more to get to. We'll talk about the tough spot that young, recent college graduates are now in because our economy is trash. We'll be right back. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our social break. All right, let's read a bunch more comments. Daff Mill says, gun control in the Third Reich by Stephen P. Halbrook shows gun control groups use the same arguments, the same reasoning as Hitler and the Nazis using recently translated articles and documentation. Yeah, look, nothing solidified my support for the Second Amendment more than what I saw happen and continues to happen in the West Bank. God, I want those Palestinians to have guns so badly, like so badly, to protect themselves. That's it, just to be able to protect themselves and their homes. They have no way of defending themselves. And how do you look at that and think, yeah, weapons aren't necessary? Now, look, I get it. Mass shootings are a problem, a huge problem. I'm not at all downplaying that. But it goes beyond gun control laws. There was a story, we didn't cover it because what is there to say about it? Honestly, it was just so horrific. There was a guy who over the weekend in Louisiana killed 7 of his own children and 1 other child as they were sleeping. There is something beyond, and by the way, he had the gun illegally. He didn't legally purchase that gun. So my point is, the gun control isn't the only answer, right? The problems we have with mass shootings goes beyond that. And we have very real mental health issues in this country. And we do need to tackle those issues instead of looking for a quick fix, because there are no quick fixes when it comes to an issue like this. Anyway, I'll read more of your comments when we come back from the break. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. I love reading from you. Box, thank you for commenting. Box in our member section says, I have yet to see photographic evidence of 50,000 people. So that's a reference to the ever-changing and growing number of protesters that the IRGC allegedly killed in late December, early January. I have no doubt that people got killed. I am not denying that. But haven't you guys noticed how the number keeps changing? Like at one point it was 30,000, then it was 35,000. One time I was on the Piers Morgan show and there were 2, members of the Iranian diaspora. One of them said 35,000. And then like a few minutes later, the other one said 45,000. I'm just like, okay, so whose number am I supposed to accept here? Am I just supposed to accept the highest number with no evidence, no documentation, no proof? And guys, when I am not looking for specificity and accuracy because I'm trying to downplay anything. I need to know the facts. I'm not going to just regurgitate numbers that aren't proven. That is irresponsible and it's wrong to do. And I have a lot more respect for you guys than that. Okay, I get it. I'm going to get a bunch of heat. Oh, Anna's not accepting the highest number we're citing, even though the number is going to change next week to 50,000 or 80,000. I don't even know. But also keep in mind, prior to the ceasefire that's, kind of holding right now between the United States and Iran, we were bombing Iran to smithereens. Bombing Iran to smithereens. What's the death toll? Close to 3,000. So weeks and weeks and weeks of dropping like 2,000-pound bombs on Iran, and the death toll is around 3,000? But a few short days of protests led to a death toll of 35,000, 45,000. I just don't believe it. So sorry, I don't know. Thank you for writing in. We've got Faye Scotts Smith who says, hey, Anna, I watch your show every night now. I really thought that Trump's post on Truth Social was particularly strange, even scary. What are your thoughts? I mean, I think most of his posts are scary because, look, I want to just keep it real. This is not even political, okay? Obviously, I disagree with Trump politically, but I can be an adult and just have a rational conversation about it. But I'm genuinely worried because he's not mentally well, okay? He's not acting normally, even for himself, right? He's obviously aging. I think he's experiencing significant cognitive decline. And that is a scary place to be when he's also very temperamental, throws tantrums, and on top of that, threatens to do incredibly dangerous things that would kill a lot of innocent people. So when he talks about how he's gonna wipe out an entire civilization is gonna die tonight, yeah, that kind of stuff does scare me. It's not a joke. And I really do think that his cabinet needs to have a conversation about whether or not this is the right way to go to keep him in office as president. I mean, you even had Alex Jones say, maybe we should invoke the 25th Amendment. So I don't know, I am worried. I definitely am worried, but thank you for writing in and sharing your thoughts with me. Okay, I'll read one more comment. This is from Gargoyle Dragon who says, Anna, did you hear about the mass shooter that used AI to plan his spree, violent and unimaginative? Okay, I don't mean to laugh, but unimaginative is an interesting way of describing it. I hate AI so much. I do. I don't think it's necessary. I don't. I hate driverless cars. People are gonna get mad at me. I know you're gonna get so mad at me. We see so many of them around our office and I flip them off every time. I know that doesn't do anything, but it feels good. There's those like little like robot delivery carts. I want to kick them into the street. I don't. But maybe I should. Anyway, but don't do that. Don't do that. I don't want anyone to catch a charge for doing anything like that. But I hate AI, period. I just do. I think it's unnecessary and I think it's dystopian. Okay. Let's talk about, well, what's happening with recent college grads, because it's not good. So, young Americans are facing abnormally high levels of both unemployment and underemployment. And you probably won't be surprised to find out that, they all hate AI because AI is related to this. But while many are turning to trade schools thinking that, learning a trade will be AI proof, the fact of the matter is everyone is thinking the same thing. And trade schools are in high demand. And so let's start with the job market and what that looks like for America's young people. So we're currently experiencing a historical anomaly because the most recent data from the Federal Reserve pegged the unemployment rate for recent grads at 5.7% in the fourth quarter of last year, 2025. That's above the national rate, which almost never happens, right? So the unemployment rate on a national level is also kind of BS, right? So it doesn't include important groups of people who would make the number much higher, like those who have given up on finding work, those who are severely underemployed. Like if you work 1 hour a week, literally just 1 hour a week, you're included in the employment numbers. You are employed according to the federal government, which is ridiculous. However, officially, our unemployment rate stands at 4.2% nationally. Okay, so prior to 2020, recent graduates generally had a lower rate of unemployment than the rest of the American population, but the tides unfortunately have turned. So speaking of 2020, underemployment for recent grads was at 42.5%. Is at 42.5%. And that actually is the highest since 2020. So there are different definitions for underemployment, but underemployment is really important to focus on because, you're considered underemployed if, let's say, you went to school, went into a ton of debt, and then were unable to find a job in the field that you studied. That's considered underemployed. But the definition of underemployment that I actually like a lot more, because I think this is something a lot of Americans have been dealing with, is when you want to work full time, but there are no full-time opportunities for you. So you have to cobble together, if you're lucky enough to find, a bunch of part-time jobs. So that's also considered underemployed. So what does that have to do with all of this? Well, at companies that adopted AI, junior hiring fell nearly 8% within 6 quarters. Not because of layoffs, but through a quiet freeze on new positions. And that's according to Harvard working paper tracking 62 million workers. So guys, it's here. Okay, so there are mass layoffs, by the way. Oracle laid off tens of thousands of their employees in a freaking email at night. Yeah. Please tell me about how offended you are at me mocking that Ellison disgusting pig. But yeah, that's what they did. But on top of that, there are hiring freezes. So that's also contributing to the lack of jobs out there. Almost 60% of hiring managers use AI as an excuse for layoffs or hiring freezes because it plays better with stakeholders. And that's according to resume.org, a survey that they carried out. So some of this turmoil can be attributed to Trump's stupid decisions. Just let's call it what it is. So for instance, Jim Vandehei and Mike Allen, the co-founders of Axios, write the following. We talk to scores of CEOs every month and hear a common theme. With so much uncertainty about the economy, tariffs, geopolitics, and AI, it's easier to freeze hiring and take a wait and see approach. And look, guys, there is going to be downsizing if this war continues, because the price of gas goes up, right? The price of energy goes up as a result of this war. It's not just that you're going to be paying more at the pump. The cost of transporting goods goes up as a result of that. And there's going to be limited supply of certain things. So a third of the world's fertilizer comes from the Middle East, from the Gulf in particular. That is now being blocked thanks to this war. That means that farmers are having a harder time getting their hands on the fertilizer they need to grow the food that we rely on. So there's going to be a shortage of food, which means some people are going to go hungry. Others are going to have to pay a lot more for the food they eat and the food they need for themselves and their families. So this inflation is going to be really rough, terrible for people. And so you're going to have even less disposable income if you had disposable income to begin with. That means consumer sentiment will go down. People aren't going to be spending, meaning businesses will suffer and people will get fired. That's how it works. And I don't mean to be a doomer here. I'm just being honest with you guys, because we don't have any adults in the room right now who care about ordinary people. And the decisions that Trump has made has only made our economy worse, not better. Many feel they overhired during COVID. This is back to Axios, and don't want to staff up now, only to lay people off if AI does what its makers promise. Indeed, CEOs tell us that they assume AI will replace a lot of white-collar work, so they've paused backfilling jobs typically filled by junior new hires. God, I feel so bad. I feel so bad for young people in America right now. And by the way, I say this as a millennial. Millennials graduated into the economic recession that took place starting in 2008. There were no jobs. It was a really, really tough time for young people, and millennials felt shafted for good reason. So I know it's hard to believe it, but I do feel their pain to some extent. Now, we've heard what the CEOs have to say. Let's actually take a look at what's going on with workers. So if you look at this graph, this is data from Gallup. It says job market sentiment by education level from 2022 to 2025. And it's the percentage of people saying, good time to find a job or a quality job among US employees. Okay, well, the blue line on this chart illustrates the percentage of workers between 18 and 34 years old who believe that now is a good time to find a job. And as you can see, that number has fallen from over 70% in the first quarter of 2022, all the way down to just 19% in the fourth quarter of 2025. Now, is anyone in Congress worried about this? Doesn't look like it. Is the executive branch, is the administration concerned about this? Hell no, they're not. I mean, Trump is busy with his crypto schemes and his freaking, market manipulation tactics and, pleasing his masters over in Israel. Like, that's all Trump is thinking about. So is it any wonder that young Americans absolutely loathe AI? Gen Z's excitement about AI, they were excited about AI. I don't believe that excitement ever existed, but Gen Z's excitement about AI dropped 14 points over the last year to just 22%. Hopefulness about the technology fell 9 points to 18%, while anger rose 9 points to 31%. And guys, that anger is what should concern the power players in this country. Because when people feel, and look, I'm not calling for violence, I want to be clear about that. But I also want everyone to be very aware that when people feel that they have nothing to live for, that they have no opportunities, that they have nothing left to lose, I'm worried that, they will turn to acts of violence, especially when there's a higher and higher percentage of Americans who are struggling and they don't see an opportunity to get out of that situation because the economy is basically rigged against them. God, these elites, like these executives, these like tech titans, why do they want to live in a society like that? Like, you're going to build the moat around your estate and what? You're going to be safe? You're going to be living a great life? You're going to live in Mars? Anyway, let's keep going. So this isn't a matter of when or this isn't even a matter of whether or not young Americans are actually using AI. So daily AI users among the cohort saw even bigger drops in sentiment, with excitement falling 18 points and hopefulness tumbling 11 points. And in the face of all of this, young Americans are turning to trade schools. So this is an important part of the story because I thought trade schools could be the answer. And we do have a shortage of like plumbers, electricians, HVAC workers. These are so hot, by the way. Anyway, but yeah, we do have that shortage, right? Well, it turns out that that education is not actually very cheap because it's in high demand. As free and low cost routes like community colleges and union apprenticeships fill up, more students are turning to more costly private options. A 9-month cosmetology program in New Jersey, for instance, costs $17,000, while a 14-month aircraft maintenance program in Florida costs $40,000. Nationwide, trade and technical school revenue hit $5.1 billion in the last quarter of 2025, up 41% from 4 years before that, according to federal data. So just a piece of advice. There are a bunch of rich people who desperately want tax breaks through charity. And so they're looking to give some money to a student who needs it. Just write those essays, because no one writes the essays. No one thinks they're gonna win. No one thinks they're gonna get the grant. No one thinks they're gonna get the money. You'll get the money. Write the stupid essay, okay? They're not gonna read it. You don't even have to put much effort behind it. Just do it and do as many of them as you can. Take their money and get some help paying for college or trade school. The best situation you could be in out of college or trade school is no debt or as little debt as possible. So try to think about that and set yourself up to be a little freer than most of our students find themselves because of how exorbitant tuition happens to be. Anyway, it'd be great if we stopped sending money to Israel, instead, provided free trade school and free community college for our students, but God forbid we do that. We gotta take a break, a lot more to get to when we come back. All right, everybody, welcome back to our social break. All right, look at all these super chats. Thank you to Jessica Isaac for the super chat. Thank you to Multi-Phoenix 30. Anna, I want to say this AI will be the death of us. I know, believe me, I know. I don't like it. I like people. I want to see people in a car. You know what I'm saying? So one of the behaviors that I've been trying to change, and it's hard because there's nothing better than coming home from work and just staying home. But I'm trying to be better about going outside, taking a walk. If I see a neighbor, don't try to run away, try to have a conversation with them. Because we're losing touch with one another and with reality, and everything is becoming even more atomized and technology based. And that sucks. I don't want to lose human connection. Bach says, oh, you graduated? That's nice. I'll take the mocha frappuccino, please. No, they might not even have those jobs available, honestly. Anyway, Callie Millie says, my uncle died for the 79 revolution. And I want to take my time with this. So let's get back to the show and I'll read your comment. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. I was on Piers Morgan today, and I normally don't plug when I'm on Piers Morgan, but I'm going to do that today because I need you guys to tell me you're proud of me. I went in and I said, you know what, Anna? You're gonna prove that you are capable of not losing your crap and like shouting over people. So I was respectful. I said my piece, didn't interrupt anybody. I think I made some pretty good points, right? I was proud of myself. I was. Look, it's really hard when we're talking about human lives and people are lying in your face. Nothing triggers me more than that. And so that's why I lose my temper, and I know I need to do better. But check it out and maybe, leave a little love in the comments if you feel like it. Anyway, I want to read a comment from our super chat section. It's from Callie Millie, who says, my uncle died for the 79 revolution. This is in Iran. And many cousins have faced arrest for protesting the IR. Thank you for digging deeper and speaking up. It is tough watching the systemic lies and threats of destruction as if it's normal. Well, Callie Millie, it's not normal. And I understand the nuances of the situation. I have absolutely no malice in my heart for Iranians in Iran who would like to see change in their country. I want the best for them. And I just know without a shadow of a doubt that the United States was never going to liberate them. The US and Israel have no interest in the liberation of the Iranian people. So that's why I was fighting so hard to prevent this war from happening. The only regime change that makes sense is when the people organically rise up and make it happen. Not by Mossad agents agitating and arming people on the ground. It's just, and I know it's not obvious. I know that it sounds heartless to say like, no, the US shouldn't get involved, but I'm not trying to be heartless. I love my country. I hate my government, and I know what my government is capable of. I'm just gonna keep it there, okay? By the way, there was some Armenian X account from the government, Armenian government, like wishing Israel well and saying something about how like, oh, we can't wait to forge new business relationships. What are you doing? What are you doing? No. Stay away. You think Israel's gonna help you? Are you crazy? Are you crazy? Anyway, unbelievable. So see, even in my context, okay, when it comes to Armenia, do not get involved, Israel. Please stay away. Stay as far away as humanly possible. Okay, let's get to our next story, which is kind of related to what our commenters shared with us. We have to discuss the, for lack of a better word, charlatans who demanded that the United States military bomb their homeland and goaded the Trump administration into starting a war with Iran, which has proven to be a disaster for the globe. Now they're suddenly doing a PR tour to clear their names and pretend like they never called for war, and a Kasperian never forgets. So let's begin with the frizzy-haired Iranian dissident that I had the fortune of not even knowing anything about until this year. So this is the person I'm talking about, Masih Alinejad. She apparently went on Voice of America Farsi to say, quote, I do not belong to the group of opposition that romanticized the war. And I kiss the hands of my critics. Oh, fascinating. You kiss the hand of your critics. Now, I really had no idea who this woman was, never heard of her before, until suddenly one day, my phone is blowing up with hate messages from the Iranian diaspora. And they're vicious, very, very vicious. I'm like, why are they attacking me? Like, I've got no hate for Iranians. Are you kidding me? Well, it's because of something I said on the Piers Morgan show. And apparently this woman, Masih, saw what I said and decided to put out a video of her own. And I think it's important to watch this video because it gives you a sense of what she was demanding that she now claims she never romanticized, she never wanted. Let's take a look.
Okay, but regime change should not be spurred by the United States and Israel, which wants to install.
You don't hate the regime in Iran. You don't hate the Islamic Republic. You hate us. You hate every single woman who get beaten up, who go to prison, who get lashes for the crime of just simply dressing like you. You hate us. because you give misinformation to international community right now. Absolutely darkness in Iran because of the internet shutdown. Iranians have no voices, but you go on Iran, on Iran talking everywhere to international media and giving wrong information.
I've never gone on Iran media. I don't know what she's talking about there. That was Piers Morgan. I believe he's based in the United States these days, or the UK. But either way, I mean, obviously very triggered by me saying that the United States should not militarily pursue regime change in Iran, which can only mean one thing. She desperately wanted the US military to invade her homeland, which means she was calling for war. That's what she was calling for. All right. So she can try to launder her reputation and her image as much as she wants, but we'll never forget her behavior, her demands, or the fact that she directed all these unhinged lunatics to harass me for no reason other than I don't want the military that my tax dollars fund to go attempt to do a regime change war in a country that has a formidable military, that has a mountainous country that's difficult to fight a ground operation in. I've thought about these things, but strawmanning me and alleging that I hate Iranians is one of the most disgusting, propagandistic, garbage statements I've ever heard. There is no proof behind that whatsoever. But I want to read from another Iranian, because I want to just remind you all, as much as our media recycles lunatics like that woman in TV shows, interviews, whatever, she is not representative of the majority of the Iranian diaspora. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But this is what Trita Parsi had to say after he saw the recent statements from her. Few Iranian American voices have been as supportive of bombing Iran or as aggressive in defaming opponents of war as Masih Alinejad. But now that it's clear that the war has been a disaster, she predictably backtracks and tries to portray herself as a victim. But her contemptible role will not be forgotten. Kasparians never forget. Parsis never forget. I love it. She betrayed two people here, the Iranian people whose blood is on her hands, and the American people whose military she treated as her private mercenary army. I love Trita so much. She is absolutely right. Co-founder of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Now, what's particularly disgusting is how corporate and legacy media in the United States, used her specifically over and over again as the representation of how the entire Iranian diaspora felt about US intervention in Iran. They all want it. They're all demanding it, right? But no, nothing could be further from the truth. Now, before the war started, there was a near even split among the Iranian diaspora in regard to war with Iran. About half of them thought it was a good idea, half of them did not think it was a good idea, but you never heard the voices of Iranian Americans who thought it was a bad idea. They were not on CNN, okay? They were not invited on the Piers Morgan show. Just keeping it real, Piers. I love doing your show. I'll come on as long as I'm available anytime. But open up the dialogue, open up the discussion, okay? Because women like her are not the only ones who are speaking for Iranians. There are Iranians who disagree with her, and they deserve to be heard as well. Now, those were the numbers before the war started. What about after the war started? Well, NIAC or NIAC worked with, I believe, Zogby, if I'm not mistaken, in order to do a poll after the war started. And they found that 66.1% of Iranian Americans either strongly or somewhat opposed the US war on Iran. It's a pretty high number, isn't it? And it was Zogby, just to be clear. Okay. Now, what American media also fails to disclose is that Masih Alinejad is a US government operative. She is paid by the United States government. It's never disclosed, never disclosed. But I did a little bit of digging. And back in 2020, Eli Clifton from Responsible Statecraft did a fantastic job carefully disclosing what our media refused to do. So let's take a look at this. So this is the name of the piece that he published. I highly recommend you read the whole thing. It's titled US Media Outlets Failed to Disclose US Government Ties of Iranian Journalist Echoing Trump Talking Points. Remember, this is in January of 2020. This is before, the COVID pandemic really popped off. So just imagine like where we were as a country back then. So she apparently works as an anchor, writer, reporter for Voice of America Persian Service, a US government-owned television network broadcasting to Iranians, according to a publicly available description of her federal contract reviewed by Responsible Statecraft. Gee, if she is actually an operative of a government, including our own government, especially when she's pretending to speak on behalf of the Iranian people, maybe our media needs to disclose that information, no? She received more than $305,000 in contracts for her work at Voice of America Persia between May of 2015 and September of 2019. Now on Twitter or X, she describes herself on her profile as an Iranian journalist and activist, but she makes no mention of her work with the US government in manufacturing consent for the war that we're currently involved in. Now, she's not the only member of the Iranian diaspora who has proven to be a charlatan. Let's go to our next one. And the person I'm talking about here, of course, is Reza Pahlavi. So in early April, a clip from an interview featuring exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi caught my attention. So for the audio audience, I promise you I will read what he says verbatim after the video. So let's take a look first.
Non, d'abord, je dirais que nous n'avons jamais cherché des interventions militaires dans notre pays. Mais n'oublions pas que c'est ce régime qui est responsable d'avoir amené notre pays au point où on a dû subir des attaques de la part des Israéliens et des Américains dans ce conflit.
I'd say we never sought military intervention in our country. That's what Reza Pahlavi said with a straight face. I'd say we never sought military intervention in our country, but let's not forget this regime brought our country to the point where we had to endure attacks from the Israelis and Americans. What? You think we're dumb? He thinks we're dumb. These people think we're dumb. It was like yesterday. You were doing press conferences and interviews and like social media videos calling for war. That's what you were doing. I will be the interim leader, dictator. I will foster democracy, even though I haven't lived in Iran for like 48 years. Who even are you, bro? Like, you know nothing about Iran. You haven't lived there in decades. What are you talking about? But he saw an opportunity to essentially be installed as the leader of Iran. And did he call for war? Yeah, he did call for war. He's a liar, to say the least. So here's an interview he did with Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business back in January.
I want to get your take on these threats from the Iranian Khomeini regime, saying that they will target U.S. military bases in the Middle East should the Trump administration get involved here. Are you expecting the administration, do you want to see the administration go into Iran and take out Khomeini? And what about the threats that they will hit back at our military installations in the Middle East?
Look, the people of Iran have responded and reacted positively to a promise of intervention by the president and his administration, that if the regime turns their gun and continue massacring its own people, that will not remain unanswered. That's the ask on the ground. We need to make sure that this time the Iranian people are successful. That kind of assistance will go a long way in letting the Iranian people prevail in this war that we have against this regime. And we need to cut the snake's head off for good, so it can no longer be a threat to our Iranian interest, to American interest, to regional interest. And the only solution is to make sure that this regime goes down for good.
Oh, you're speaking on behalf of the Iranian people. The Iranian people were begging to be bombed. Is that what they were asking for? That's what he said in January. And then just a few weeks ago, he says, I'd say we never sought military intervention in our country, but let's not forget this regime brought our country to the point where we had to endure attacks from the Israelis and Americans. Total clown show. Clown. And look, who can blame the brother, right? I mean, hasn't earned a thing in his life, living the good life here in the United States. I think he's in the East Coast somewhere. Who knows? Who cares? And, he finally had an opportunity to be something. And he talks about it in this next clip.
The Iranian people have called on me to lead the transition after the regime is gone. I have accepted that responsibility.
Did you? Did they? What a clown. Now, later in that same interview I showed you earlier, where he claims they never wanted military intervention, he also said this: the rest is up to the Iranians. When will the Iranian people rise up? Everyone is asking. This piece of crap took a huge role in getting his homeland bombed, in getting an elementary school full of little girls bombed, double tapped actually. 175 people killed. Of those 175, 168 children, elementary aged children. Scum of the earth. That's what he is. He's scum. Are they liberated? Are those little girls liberated? I'm just wondering what Reza Pahlavi has to say about that. Finally, that leads to the final charlatan I'd like to discuss. And that's one of the dumber ones, if you can believe it, Elika Laban, who seemed to put the onus on the Iranian people, much like Pahlavi, because it turns out that dropping bombs on them isn't enough. Now, in this next video, it's a little bit of a word salad, I get it, but you have to listen till the end. Take a look.
I don't think that there's ever been a time where war by itself would effectuate regime change. There are other things that need to sort of unite, like, for example, uprisings, defections within the ranks. And the person that has largely been responsible for that is the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi. So when he called people out into the streets in January, they went out in their millions. When the internet got shut down, his views went down in the millions. So there was a strong evidence that there was a strong connection there. And so I think where this war has gone, sort of been negligent, is in not pulling in the other actors that would effectuate regime change, right? Also, Reza Pahlavi, I think there's, I can't say the numbers for sure, but I think there's like 150,000 people within the ranks that are looking to defect to him. And so,
what are you basing that on? How do we know that?
His team says that. How do we know? I mean, I can only tell you what his team says.
His team said that? The guy who wants to be the dictator of a country he hasn't lived in for 48 years told you that there's 150,000 members of the Iranian military who want to defect and join his ranks, and you just repeat it, you just regurgitate it. And I'm supposed to believe her when she tells me that 35,000 Iranians were gunned down by the IRGC during those protests. No way. There's no way. There is no freaking way. So be careful who you trust. Be careful who engages in emotional manipulation to get you to sign on to things like war because it's allegedly going to liberate people. War doesn't liberate people. Dropping bombs on people's heads, destroying their hospitals, their mosques, their schools, that doesn't liberate them. That terrorizes them, that kills them, that tortures them. The only way that you get actual change in any society, in any country, isn't through a foreign country coming in and messing things up. and deciding for you who your leader should be. The only way you change things for the better is through organizing and through organic movement, organic uprisings that foreign countries are not meddling in. So my heart goes out to all the Iranian people, the civilians who are living a hell right now, mostly because of US involvement. It's awful, and I feel shame about it all the time because this is my government. But one thing that I'll ask is, please don't mistake the depraved US government and its actions for the American people. Yeah, some percentage of Americans wanted this, but if you look at the numbers, a huge majority of Americans did not want this, did not think it was a good idea. But we don't live in a democracy. Our voices don't matter. And our government is going to carry out war whether we like it or not. It would be really helpful if we didn't have these little disinformation merchants running around acting like the charlatans that they are to manufacture consent for a war that only makes people's lives worse. Anyway, I'm going to read some comments and then we'll move on over to our bonus episode where I'll talk about the Laura Loomer drama. So the Umakaram says, so funny. This is an interview with you, Cenk, and PBD. It's so funny. He was saying how Dems are the warmongers and Trump is against war. So good. By the way, let me just be clear. There are warmongers in the party establishment on both sides. That doesn't mean, I mean, like they're bribed by the same people, okay? They're bribed by the same industries. And so, look, when it comes to war, it's not just the Israel lobby that's incredibly influential, it's also the defense contractors. Defense contractors love making money off war. They're war profiteers. So we have to change our system of government. I don't see this as a partisan issue. I see this as a problem with our political system that needs to be fixed. But yes, I mean, back in the day, Republicans were the hardcore warmongers, and Democrats have been catching up to them, which is just depressing. All right, Paul B. Hoyes says, Anna, I'm a George Galloway left and accused of being a Nazi. You and Cenk are doing great work. I don't know too much about George Galloway. I've seen some of his content on X, and he's a fiery guy. And I like fiery. You know I like it. So I appreciate how undeterred he is. He speaks his mind, and I've got a special place in my heart for people who are vocal about the things they believe. Golden Girls Dragon in our TYT member section, thank you for being a premium member, says, Anna, you think people have to manufacture race hate? Even police pay informants to be inside of the opposition. This is an issue because they focused on protecting white supremacy. You're right about that. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And it's gross, so it shouldn't be done. Marianne DB says, funny story, I saw the small clip of that AI video and didn't really watch it at all, but I assumed it was an Arabian woman talking about the IDF. Sorry, Israel, I'm just gonna assume you're the villain. You don't have to assume. You should never assume anyone's a villain. Look for the receipts. That's what matters. Look for the evidence. Look at their behavior. And honestly, the behavior of the Israelis, undeniably criminal, undeniably depraved and wrong. Inhumane, to say the least. Let's go to uncertain situation. Anna, maybe CNN Jake got upset. I can't say that word, sorry. Upset by picking on him here. I don't even pick on Jake Tapper. Cenk does. I don't think it's that. Honestly, I think it's because I called Jonathan Conricus a terrorist on Piers Morgan's show. That got me fired from Real Clear Investigations. And I think that at the same time, CNN, they kept asking me, which dates are you available? Which dates are you available? And then I finally got back to them with the dates I'm available. Didn't hear back for a few days. And then I got some excuse about how, yeah, we just, during the war, we decided we're not going to fly anyone in. Right. It's okay, whatever. It is what it is. I want to be in a place where I can just be me and be free, speak my mind. Honestly, the only place I've ever experienced that is TYT. I'm not kidding. I'm just going to leave it there. All right. I'll read one more comment before we go over to our members only bonus episode. By the way, no happy half hour today. Brett is feeling under the weather. Actually, a lot of people have the cold or something. I don't know. I'm kind of getting an itchy throat. Hopefully it goes away. But no happy half hour tonight. Little Mac McGee says, it's like Israel accuses others of the crimes they themselves commit. It's almost like that's where they came up with the idea for the crimes to accuse others of committing. It does seem that way. It does seem like every accusation is an admission. Old Dirty Pastor, hilarious, says, I swear the majority of her followers are bots. I think you mean Elika. I've been calling her out for months. Now her followers reek of AI. There's a lot of fake stuff going on online. That's for sure. In our Twitch community, we have Rugby Man who says, I feel she attacked you trying to hide and or discredit you because you aren't on the side she's defending. Yeah. That has to do with the Iranian diaspora. Microgram says, this woman was all over right-wing news leading up to attacking Iran. She seemed like she was insane before she even started warmongering. Agreed. Totally agreed. Don't let them launder their reputation. Never forget what they demanded. They demanded that the US military bomb their homeland to smithereens. And there's something wacky about that. I can't imagine a member of the Armenian diaspora begging the US to bomb their homeland. By the way, you guys are in that camp too. Get it together. You're in America now. You're an American citizen. Please stop asking our government to terrorize Cubans in Cuba. It's wrong. It's terrible. Members only is next. We'll see you there.
Maybe I could get lost in